Alright, I feel like I should not be filming when I'm this emotionally charged right now at the fact that I was playing a game of Paladins and it turned very sour because someone was yelling at me over across the interwebs and they were telling me that I was really bad at what I was doing and it infuriated me, and I'm not kidding. I like yelled to Paul about it and I ranted on Facebook, and I'm really not someone who does that, but this situation really infuriated me. And it actually relates to today's video though, which is why I decided to film it. Also, I'm really sorry, I am sick right now. I'm filming a couple of videos today and I'm just, getting over this like sickness. I feel a little bit better. I definitely feel better. I was like not feeling better a couple of days ago. Also, I don't know if you can see in the background, but Paul got me a porg for Star Wars. This is Swy. I've had Swy for a year now. But yeah, Paul got me a porg for Star Wars and we named it Jedi, and he flaps. Okay, how could anyone be unhappy looking at this thing? This is what I should have done when I got really upset, is look at Jedi. Anyways, so I wanted to film this video, and I've actually wanted to film this video for a little bit now. I came up with this idea, actually, pretty much about a month ago when you guys are seeing this a little bit later, but for around Thanksgiving time when we went over to our friends for Friendsgiving, and it was kind of cool because we got the chance to talk to some people that we didn't know. It was our good friend Travis and Mag's house, and they have their other friends and stuff, so like we didn't really know these people, and we were just like talking. And when you put Magic players together without Magic decks, what do? We just talk about Magic. And this guy was telling me, he was like, oh, have you heard? And gosh, I'm so sorry that I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it's basically like a bell curve, which I drew for you because I'm fancy. I'm not fancy. This is like the least fancy thing I've ever done in my existence. But basically it's like a bell curve, like a standard bell curve. And it's basically, like, I don't know what it's called, but it's like, I'm gonna name it, like, the Magic the Gathering Bell Curve. It's probably a fancier thing than it, but I don't know what it is. And pretty much the whole idea, and this is, like, literally bare bones skeleton, like, the most basic of the most basic, trying to explain it. But you have, like, the bottom, and the bottom is basically, like, how nice you are, and the top is how mean you are. And I guess you could theoretically do this as a reverse bell curve, where you, like, have it go like this, which I think that's how originally it was done, where basically the whole thing is just, like, flipped like this. But anyways, it's it's just like this, and it's pretty much just showing that, and pretty much the way that this kind of works is you have here, you're starting out as a Magic player, and everything is just great. You are like living the dream, everything is amazing, you are like, I love everything, you're like this optimistic, enjoyable individual, right? And then you start getting into like competitive Magic. Not everyone does this, but people who do competitive Magic, and then you become real mean, and then you're an absolute jerk to everyone, or most people, or some people are. I know I was one of those people, which we'll talk about in this video. And then as the better of a Magic player you become, you start to go off of this, and then you become a pro player, and then you're down here and nice. Now, when I phrase it like this, you think, oh my god, this is like such a linear thing. You play a ton of Magic, and then you become a pro player, and like everything is awesome. And as we know, this is like not the reality for a lot of people, right? A lot of people don't even like get here, and they kind of just always like stick in like this kind of like top half, right, where they start out really nice, and then they get up here, and then they're at like the pinnacle of this, and then they're the pinnacle of their meanness, and then and I kind of want to talk about this and like analyze it and like why that happens. So I 100% definitely feel like this was me, and I've definitely talked about getting out of competitive Magic, and you can definitely watch some of those videos, but yeah, I pretty much just realized that one aspect of me being in competitive Magic was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of emotions, a lot of negative emotions. It was emotionally charged, and I was honestly thinking about it when the game of Paladins that I shared with you in the beginning of the video, it was like, God, I feel like I don't want to talk about it, but it relates to, because I'm still so annoyed about the situation, and I think what was happening is, like, other people noting my performance and commenting on my performance, and I'm very self-conscious, and so, and that's, like, really hard, I will say, like, being self-conscious, when you do, like, I don't know, if you do everything, like, where you stay at home and you don't go out and you do your work, and you probably work in, like, an office or something, where your, like, social interactions with people are limited, I'm sure, hey, life is pretty great and life is pretty, like, easy, when you don't have to worry about other people's opinions. But when you're doing, I don't know, playing Magic competitively, and you're so, like, out there with like talking to people all the time and like other people like criticizing your performance, but ultimately I think something that this bell curve really comes back to is that it's a lot of it is like on you, and a lot of it is like your self performance. So like me, for example, like when I play paladins and I get very, and I use paladins as an example because it's probably like one of the things that I do that is the most competitive, I would say, in my life, where it sounds kind of silly, maybe, like it's a video game, but I do think for a lot of people that is where they get mostly competitive, where that's not something that happens at work, which is really nice being a teacher, that everyone kind of has their own style and everyone does their own thing, which is really cool. I don't feel like it's a place to be like, oh man, I'm jealous, or I wish I could be that person. I don't really feel like that comes into play there. I think it's more like, hey, you have a really cool style, and I like to, you know, the best teachers are the best thieves, so I like steal people's ideas, and I'm like, hey, this is a really cool thing, and then I kind of merge that and, you know, want to be the best teacher that I can be. But there was a many tangents that went off there. I don't know, it was like railroads all crossing at the same point, and like some all like various railroads from various directions, you know, all merging into one. But yeah, so I felt like I was definitely a really big jerk to not only myself but to other people, and I definitely realized this about myself, is I can be super mean to people that I do not know. And I think I ultimately realized through conversation with people that one reason that I love working with kids so much is because they're not adults. And that sounds really like obvious, like duh, they're like 12. And people are like, wow, I feel really bad that you have to work with 12-year-olds. I'm like, no, like you shouldn't, because they're funny. And I feel like I love having conversations with kids. It's like definitely like the best thing versus like having conversation with adults like gives me anxiety, and I don't have anxiety when I talk to kids. I love talking to kids. They're like super awesome. And I think a lot of people always think that they're like, oh, they always think of that with like an elementary thing, like, oh, little kids. I'm like, no, like middle schoolers, they're still really funny and definitely still have their cute moments in them. But yeah, so I definitely think this is something that happened to me. I definitely think I was really a jerk, and I definitely still am. Like, I think when I go to, I mean, the most competitive I would say that I'm gonna do is go to, like, a pre-release, which is, like, pretty relaxed for the most part. But, yeah, I think a lot of this bell curve stuff really comes back to, like, frustration. So frustration with, like, yourself because you're not performing well. Another thing I think that goes along with this is, like, not doing enough prep, I would say. Like, you have all this stuff going on and you kind of pour yourself into Magic and the results don't go out the way that you want to, and that could be because maybe you just don't have enough time. You don't have enough time to like do all of this work to like become a better Magic player, and that takes a lot of effort, and I think that takes a lot of dedication, and I think it's a lot more than maybe some people realize. Like, I think some people are like, and I think I was under this assumption too, that I could do the bare minimum and be okay. And I feel like this is like the cold reality is that you can't. Like, I think that's one thing that if you do want to become a competitive Magic player, like you have to pour everything into it. And I think that was the thing that really like, that's not who I am. And I think a lot of people maybe are still trying to figure that out. Like, oh, I can definitely work a full-time job and have a family and be a competitive Magic player, and I don't know, maybe it's like a different people can do different things and can handle things, but I think the thing with Magic is it really is like a full-time job, really, if you want to be the best. And I think the thing that really got this is like me becoming like this like in, you know, with our little curve, like me becoming like a meaner like type of player was just not something that I wanted to do. I hate when I meet people or when I'm like, this was something that I noticed, like when this player was describing this to me, I was like, immediately I could think of instances where, you know, you start off in a tournament. This is a really good tournament representation as well, and what I mean by that is you start at the tournament, you know, whatever, even if it's just like an IQ or something like that. But or do they even have IQs anymore? I don't even know what's going on in the competitive Magic scene. They've changed a whole bunch of stuff. Magic Fest, does that ring a bell? I don't know. But anyways, you start at the tournament and you're like super nice, and you could jump happy, what that's a word, but that's not the word I wanted. You're really like excited. There we go. You're really excited, and that you could mix that or happy with nice. And you're starting out and you're really excited. You're like, yes, I'm gonna crush this tournament. Things are gonna be awesome, right? And then you start losing, and you're like, wow, this sucks. And then you go up the hill, and then you're becoming meaner and meaner to your opponents. Now, I just want to say this is totally not everyone, but I'm sure there are definitely people watching this who are like shaking their heads that's me. And that's okay, because that's me too. So you don't have to feel embarrassed or ashamed. That's okay, and we'll talk about how to fix this. But anyways, you kind of go up the mountain, the ladder situation, or roller coaster, whatever, and then you keep losing round after round, and then you notice a tone changing in your the way you're speaking to your opponents, and you brush them off, you're short with them, you're saying things that you wouldn't have said if you started over here. You started in the beginning of the day, like, you would not say that. And then you're salty. You're like a bag of pretzels. And then you probably stop here. Again, you never get to this point because you end up losing the tournament. And it's really, really frustrating. And so it's like, well, how do you stop that? How do you stay always down here? How do you get there? Even if you don't ever become a pro player, even if you don't, how do you keep that thing? And I think, honestly, I think a lot of people do need to ask themselves the question, am I chasing the Pro Tour dream? Is that something that I want? Do I want to be a competitive Magic player? Is it something that I do for fun? Do I like competition? Like, I think figuring out, like, why you're doing what you're doing, and honestly, like, I do think this sounds really harsh, and I think it is something you need to legitimately ask yourself, because I had to do the same thing with myself. I had to ask myself, do I want to do this? Do I want to spend every weekend at a different tournament? And I also just want to note, there's really not a lot of big tournaments by me, in terms of, like, IQs and stuff. We don't really have that by Austin, which is, like, super weird. I feel like you would think Austin would have, like, a ton of things, but I know when I lived back in New York, there was a tournament every single week. Like, you could gather up people and go, and that was kind of a thing. But I think people need to really ask themselves that, is this something that you want? And I think if you're still trying to figure it out, like, I totally understand that, but I think a lot of people really do need to, like, splash the water in your face and, like, wake up and realize, like, what the amount of work it's gonna take to become the absolute best. And I think in my head, and this may not be true for some people, but in my head, I realized even going to a tournament every, like, once in a while to play, like, what was the point? And that's not to say, like, listen, if you want to play competitive Magic and you want to play, but you, like, don't want to go to the Pro Tour, and you're just like, hey, I like doing it because you view competitive Magic as fun, hey, that's awesome for you, and I think that's super great. I think I realized about myself, I, like, don't like things that are avidly, overly competitive. And the example that I gave you in the beginning of the Paladins thing really and still irritates me, and I feel like I hate that I keep bringing up this example, and I'm mad that I filmed it on a day that this example came up, but, like, also beneficial because you guys get a story out of it that, that makes sense. But I realized about myself that I feel like I don't like it. Like, I don't like being put against other people and being, like, judged, I feel like, is a really, really big thing for me. And I definitely feel that, like last week, I think I've mentioned this before, but my good friend Chuck, who's super awesome, I don't know if he watches my videos, but if you do, Chuck, you're fabulous, and he trains me, and he has, like, a gym, and that's, like, what he does. And so I go to him, and we were doing this exercise, and if you guys know, like, physical fitness, it's called a sled. Yeah, super, super fun times in the sled. Yeah, LOL, no. Anyways, if you don't know what it is, you just have this giant, like, weight thing, and then you just, like, push it, and then you turn it around, and then you push it back to, there's, like, parameters of, like, you start here and you end here kind of thing. Anyways, it's emotionally and physically just exhausting. And we were doing that, and I felt very, like, just judged by, like, other people, and I was like, I just can't do this. And so, like, I was like, hey, like, could I do something else? And, honestly, I felt like when I said that, because anxiety is a real thing, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm coming across like I don't want to do this activity. Like, the activity, if I was doing it by myself, where it is exhausting and emotional and draining, I would have been okay to do it by myself, but the fact that there were other people watching me really freaked me out. And I think that's something that I feel a lot in competitive Magic, is you have a lot of people, like, on the outside, like, looking in and, like, judging you, and it's hard. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are just like, oh, like, everyone's so sensitive and, like, thick skin and, like, all that stuff, and I feel like that is relevant, and I do think, yeah, I mean, in ways I definitely wish that I was more like that, but then, again, at the same time, anxiety and mental health are legitimate things, and it's hard for me to, like, overcome those types of things when they happen in the moment. That was a very, like, high stress situation for me. But okay, I feel like I didn't really answer the question, like, how do you prevent this? But I would say, I think, just trying to keep the best headspace that you can, because I do genuinely feel like it affects your gameplay, and it can not only affect your gameplay, it does affect your opponents. Like, there was this article, and I I feel like Seth Manfield wrote it on, like, opponents are people too, and that's what this, like, reminds me of, that, like, you know, you have to remember that, like, you and this opponent are going against each other, and maybe you're chasing the same thing. You are chasing the Pro Tour dream, and that's something that you both really, really want. I just think a lot of people need to come up with that question, and I think really pause and ask yourself, like, is this something that I legitimately want? Do I want to put my heart and my soul into Magic to become the absolute best? Because I think it's way more work than a lot of people realize, and I say that because it was a lot more work than I realized. It was a lot more dedication. It wasn't just, oh, I'll play Magic once a week and become better. Like, no, that is not how that works. It is something that you have to put so much attention into, and I just didn't want that, and I don't want that, and I don't think I'll ever want that, and that's okay. I still have EDH, which is a format that I really love, and drafting is fine, and sealed is fine every once in a while, but I think just figuring out, what you want out of Magic, I think is, like, really beneficial. And I think too, always being competitive, I think, is, like, gets you into really, like, something that becomes fun is no longer fun because you're only looking at it as, like, a competition. And I think that was one thing that really didn't attract me towards that, and that's why I love EDH so much. So I think, like, for people who do play competitively, maybe a benefit for you would be, even if it is just, like, a couple hours of the day or the night, take a break, maybe don't play Magic, and if you feel the need to play Magic, I don't know, maybe play, like, a different format. Like, if you're someone who you always play Standard, like, I don't know, take a break, maybe try EDH, Pauper, like, Draft, like, do something else that, if you still feel like I need to be playing Magic because Magic is my life, like, go and do that, but maybe try a different format, because I'm a firm believer in, like, the more you play a deck, regardless of what format, the better at Magic you're gonna get, and I'm a firm believer, too, in, like, playing the same deck, just so you get more familiar with that deck, versus, like, picking up a deck the night before. That's a whole separate issue, though. But yeah, that is it, guys. That's it for talking about this kind of Magic the Gathering, like, bell curve type thing. But I'd really like to know what you guys think, and I'd really like to know what you guys think in terms of, like, the practice, like, what it takes to really be a competitive Magic player. And honestly, maybe I'll do a video on that, and I think that'd be, like, really interesting. And just because I keep saying, like, oh, like, these are the cold facts, like, this is what you need to do, and, like, I think it'd be interesting maybe to, like, film another video. So let me know if you guys would like that kind of follow-up video on this, just of, like, what are things that if you are, like, I want this dream, like, this is something I want to do, like, how do I get better? Which I would need to do research of my own, because I don't fully know all the facts there. That's something that I need to know more about, how to become the best you possibly can, so. But yeah, guys, that is it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this real talk. That was, I feel like, a little bit more streamlined this time and kind of more linear than some of my other real talks, but I hope you guys enjoyed it nonetheless, and I will talk to you in my next video.